We both got involved in the late 1970s. Jack joined a year-long campaign of civil disobedience at the Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant in Colorado, and I was attending demonstrations at nuclear power plants in the eastern United States. Activists we knew were going to jail, and some of them also saw the importance of developing a support network for imprisoned activists. We recognized it as a way to maximize the contribution and amplify the voices of those behind bars. We were in our 20s and really had no idea where this would take us. We soon found ourselves in courtrooms and jail visiting rooms at protests and actions and peace camps across the country, much of the time with one and then two kids in tow. Sometimes we joined actions and were arrested ourselves. The work has definitely evolved. The first issues of the newsletter were a couple of Xerox pages composed on a manual typewriter. Now it's newsprint and everything is done on the computer. We also have a website and email bulletin, plus Facebook and Twitter pages. So we're also sharing information and updates online between newsletters. In addition to doing a lot of writing and editing, each of us gravitates toward certain tasks. Jack does the newsletter layout, I put together the email bulletins, and as co-editors, everything that's published is reviewed, edited, and agreed to by us both. We're grateful for all of the people who help in so many ways, most importantly by writing letters and otherwise supporting the prisoners.
So when we look at the history of nonviolent resistance to the bomb, we see that it played a critical role in the adoption of the Atmospheric Test Ban Treaty in the 1960s, and in the withdrawal of U.S. nuclear crews and Pershing missiles from Europe in the 1980s, and to the eventual end of underground nuclear testing as well in the 1990s. And a few years after we began, we realized that by sharing all these stories of anti-nuclear resistance, we were also chronicling the important history of a significant movement for social change. In 1990, recognizing the deadly connection between U.S. military action abroad and the implicit threat to wage nuclear war, we also began reporting on anti-war arrests. Blockades, occupations, line crossings, sit-ins, die-ins, and much more. We've reported on thousands of actions around the world, resulting in more than 100,000 arrests over the last 40 years. And the people who take part have different reasons and motivations for their involvement in civil resistance actions. Some are motivated by their religious faith, others by environmental concerns or philosophical pacifism. Sometimes it's a political action, part of a campaign with a specific goal in mind. And the common thread is that they are all examples of conscience in action. Now then, many resistors do a lot of preparation to carry that message of their action into the courtroom. And over the years, a variety of legal defenses have been presented, and more often than not, denied. For instance, free speech, religious liberty, lesser harm, necessity, international law. And now there's even legal precedent in the federal courts here in the United States to forbid certain words and legal concepts such as nuclear weapons, international law, jury nullification from even being spoken of during the trial. So after some trials, jurors have expressed frustration that the judge's instructions prevented them from hearing certain testimony and rendering a just verdict. Now, when the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons enters into force, we foresee a new path for arguing that nuclear weapons are illegal and resistance is justified.
The movement has certainly ebbed and flowed over the years, often depending on the urgency of other social justice issues. Nuclear resistors have long recognized deep connections to these other issues. The 2018 Kings Bay Plowshares Action statement and banners highlighted what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. referred to as the evil triplets of militarism, racism, and materialism. They recently issued a statement in support of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Over the past 40 years, we've encouraged and facilitated support for more than 1,000 anti-nuclear and anti-war activists who have spent from weeks to months to years in jails and prisons. And we've also had the opportunity to provide more hands-on prison support for some of them. And what we've learned is how very important it is to correspond with prisoners, to take their phone calls, and to listen to their experiences, to really listen, because our work is not about what kind of support we think they need, but to follow their lead and ask them what support they want or maybe they don't want. And we've seen that while in prison, activists learn firsthand about the injustices and the hardships faced behind bars by everyone. Many prisoners don't even have the privilege of outside support, and in prison, activists sometimes ask their supporters to assist another inmate who's in need of help.
Sometimes, like the prisoner, we can feel powerless in certain situations. One of the hardest things is health care. When a friend was very ill years ago in a Georgia jail and not getting medical attention, many of us made calls to demand that she receive care. And that finally did happen, but it took days of pressure and a lot of stress. Another challenge is solitary confinement. We were part of the U.S. campaign to free Israeli nuclear whistleblower Mordecai Vanunu, who was in solitary confinement for more than 11 years. It made communication really difficult. If we haven't heard from a prisoner for a while, it's hard to know whether the phones are broken, the whole jail is in lockdown, or the prisoner got moved to solitary, or maybe to another prison. That's when we start making phone calls. And if necessary, ask an attorney to help locate the person and see if they're okay. While supporting and accompanying these imprisoned activists, we've learned that it's important to be assertive and relentless in our advocacy, and as proactive as possible, to be a dependable ally, and to expect the unexpected. And when we see the resiliency of the human spirit in the prisoners, we are better able to summon our own spirit to persevere in this work. I'd like to close with these words from some former imprisoned activists. The Nuclear Resistor, a chronicle of hope, has been and continues to be a crucial source of information for the community of nonviolent resistors, prisoners of conscience, and their supporters. It helps to unify peace communities and build solidarity. It reminds us of the global movement we are a part of and provides a space for us to learn from and be inspired by each other. It's a real gift to get the Nuclear Resistor newsletter while in prison. When locked up, knowing that the Nuclear Resistor is out there, letting people know why we are behind bars, publishing our writings, and encouraging people to support us makes the sometimes lonely work of doing time a communal, worldwide experience.